Hi, today I wanted to talk about Kurt Cobain, the guitarist and frontman of the alternative rock band Nirvana from Seattle. He killed himself when he was only 27 years old in 1994 with a shotgun, survived by wife Courtney Love and his baby daughter. During the last years of his life, he struggled with a heroin addiction and chronic health problems like depression and chronic stomach issues. So here we want to look at his body language, his non-verbal cues, and look for signs of depression and the ultimate suicide. Okay, let's get started.
I do book show in much.
So it's the start of an interview. I don't know exactly when it was. So in the very beginning, he leans backward and he has a slight asymmetric smile, a little bit a condescending smile. In the beginning, he's keeping a distance and somehow it's not going so well. But then he's warming up and is more chatty.
Show in much, where talk to
You do what?
a book show.
And there's also a misunderstanding. Anyway.
Talk to different people about favorite books that you've read and how it's inspired you or what you learned from it or something like that.
So he looks a little bit confused.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a book that that comes back to you every once in a while?
Yeah, well,
So he has a very soft voice. He's very soft spoken. So we will see in a second that he's quite frail. We will investigate this a little bit more.
I've read Perfume by Patrick Susskind about 10 times in my life, and I can't stop reading it. It's like something that's just stationary in my pocket all the time.
So that's very interesting. It's most people know about this book. It's about this unloved orphan who has an extremely good sense of smell and at some point starts to murder young girls for their scent.
It doesn't leave me, and every time I'm bored, like I'm on an airplane or something, I read it over and over again. Because I'm a hypochondriac, and it just affects me. It makes me want to cut my nose off.
Hypochondriacs, it's someone who is obsessed with his health, worrying that he is seriously ill.
What about?
It's about this perfume apprentice in France at the turn of the century, and he
Here we see his shyness and secludedness. He turns away, he looks down for a very long time. So at his age, it's quite unusual to be shy like that. It's often a sign of some deeper issue. It's a sign of shame and guilt, which is often actually a family problem. And it can also be a sign of resignation and sadness.
is just disgusted basically with all humans, and he just can't get away from humans. So he goes on this trek, this walk of death, where he goes into the rural areas where there's woods all over the place in the small villages, and he only travels by night. And he just, every time he smells human, like a fire from a far off way, he'll just get really disgusted and hide, and he just tries to stay away from people. And I can relate to that.
So now he's very much warming up. His voice got a little bit stronger and he's smiling and he's looking very direct. Certainly he feels very strongly about this book, which is probably mirroring his own life somewhat. His parents got divorced when he was 9 years old and he felt very alone and later even outcast. His parents remarried soon afterwards. He was partially homeless at some point. He must have felt very rejected.
Do you ever use what you read in any of your songs?
As a matter of fact, I use that very story in Scentless Apprentice. Yeah.
So now he feels very proud and he is explaining also now why he came out so strongly.
So that's really one of the first times that I've ever used an actual story, as a book, as an example of a song. I've always tried to stay away from that, but now that I'm running out of ideas more and more, I tend to do that.
So he has a very low energy level. He is going back to his soft voice. He's running out of ideas. These are all sort of negative images. He has also a very dreamy look. Of course, he was a junkie. And again, this could also be already signs for a depressed and even suicidal mentality and person.
Is it hard when you spend your whole life doing the first few albums and then suddenly everybody needs your attention, you have to do interviews, you have to travel around, and suddenly is it hard to come up with ideas?
I don't know. I've just noticed that people expect more of a thematic angle with our music. They always want to read into it. And before, I was just using pieces of poetry and just garbage, just stuff that just would spew out of me at the time. And a lot of times when I write lyrics, it's just at the last second because I'm really lazy.
We see more about how he works. And this is, of course, also what this grunge music is all about. It's this Generation X music. Everything is shit. Everything is garbage. There's no point, really. And yeah, this is really what he incorporates, what he reflects in his whole personality. He has a very low self-esteem. Everything is just garbage, what he's doing. That's what he thinks.
So, and then I find myself having to come up with explanations for it, you know? So I thought I'd, you know...
His eyes look almost teary. I'm not sure if I read too much into it, but something is reminding him, which causes him to be sad at this moment.
Prevent that this time and actually have an explanation for some of the songs at least.
Oh, it was just windy.
There's a lot of baby references in all the songs. I didn't think there would be, but you have like wombs, baby's breath, baby throw up, baby
throw up?
Baby, there's baby everywhere.
Lying.
So he has this homeless vibe about him. He looks very dirty, very scummy, unclean hair.
So it had become a huge part of your life.
It has been a part of my life before Courtney was even pregnant, though. I've always been just fascinated with medical texts and charts, and I guess I secretly want to be a doctor or something. I don't know, or a person that works in a cremation factory. I don't know. I've always liked anatomy.
So again, he appears very slow. He has difficulty speaking. He's slowly processing information, and he seems very shallow. There's no spark inside of him. There's not much going on inside him. The whole vibe about him is very lifeless. It's sickness already, depression, and even potential suicide.
Anatomy, you know, ever since I was a little kid, you know, when I first got that little model of the Invisible Man, you know, anatomy men and charts and stuff, and it was like a dream come true, you know, because I've always been really poor, and if I could find something like that in a second-hand store, I'd barely have enough money to buy
So
it.
here he speaks again relatively fast and with a strong voice. So again, he feels very strongly about babies and anatomy. So these interests, these strong feelings about unexplainable things in his life, these are often things which come from previous generations or from his family background. So depression could either mean that he is rejecting his parents, so he's cut off from his parents, so there's no love flowing. Or it could be something more deeper, that, you know, there was death in his family, maybe a child died early, and this is sort of reflected in future generations, and this is sort of passed on. This feeling of following this dead child is potentially coming up in him as well, and this might lead to severe depression and even suicide.
You know, the old saying that you can't buy happiness. You think that's true?
So here he looks very frail. He's very skinny, he looks very dirty, and he has his little high-pitched, hysterical laughter. Overall, he gives Gervais this vibe of being abandoned by his parents, presumably, and alone.
Well, yeah, you can't buy happiness. I mean, that made me happy for a little while. But, I mean, I was just probably almost just as happy with, you know, I don't know, I look back on going to secondhand stores and stuff like that and finding a little treasure like that.
There's a magazine in Canada that incorporates itself for each issue, and then it goes bankrupt on each issue so that it could write whatever it wants and no one could ever sue them.
Wow, that's a pretty smart thing to do.
How's your stomach? Do you find anything to...
So let's look at a different interview, and he's asked about his stomach problems.
It's gone.
Yeah?
Yeah. I finally have been prescribed the right stomach medicine after 6 years of being in constant pain. Finally, I haven't had a stomach problem for like over a year now.
So a lot of things. So again, we see how frail he is, how thin he is, always smoking. He has this extremely sad, dead facial expression, an expression of resignation. And here's the issue with these stomach issues, these chronic ones. So in small children, that reflects separation anxiety, anxiety of being abandoned, of being rejected. And again, his parents divorced when he was just 9 years old, and I'm sure there were events leading up to the separation which were quite traumatizing to the child, and I'm suspecting this is a leftover from that time when he was a child. In adults, similar feelings of being abandoned and rejected is normally reflected as headaches or migraines. But with children, it's the stomach. They can't stomach something and then they have the stomach problems. It's interesting to see it that way.
They finally figured out what it was, or they just finally...
No, they never figured out what it was. I mean, most gastrointestinal doctors don't know anything about the stomach diseases. They just have a PhD, you know? They get paid a lot of money for pretending and prescribing you different drugs, and it's a total scam as far as I'm concerned, because I've been going to doctors for 6 years, and I've tried every drug available except for this one last one that's brand new, and it finally worked. And it can't be what do you call that? I mean, it isn't.
Placebo?
What?
Placebo?
No. No, it can't be. It isn't a specific stomach ailment. It doesn't have a name or anything. It wasn't a matter of finding out what disease I had. It's just, it's psychosomatic. It's part of my nervous system. And it's part of, there are millions of people all over the world.
So even he thinks it's psychosomatic. So there's no physical reason, it's some sort of mental problem. And I'm guessing that came early in his life.
Who have irritable bowel syndrome, and that's the common term that all doctors call a stomach problem, and they just say, oh, you have irritable bowel syndrome, but I can't fix it, I don't have.
So I think he dropped out of high school, and then his mom kicked him out, putting all his stuff and clothes in boxes and pushing him out of the door. This kind of heartless behavior of parents, is consistent with these kind of chronic stomach diseases.
Have anything to fix it, but there's just a variety of ulcer medicines that can slow down ulcers, and eventually heal them. But I didn't have an ulcer. I just had a red irritation in my stomach.
We can see how slow he is, apparently on drugs or just really depressed, or both.
Pain. I mean, I was in pain for so long that I didn't care if I was in a band. I didn't care if I was alive, And it just so happened that I came to that conclusion at a time when my band became really popular, I mean, it'd been going on and building up for so many years that I was, suicidal. I mean, I just didn't want to live. So I just thought, if I'm going to die, if I'm going to kill myself, I should take some drugs, I guess we'll become a junkie, because I felt like a junkie every day,
Here he is already articulating suicidal thoughts. The suicidal thoughts, they don't come up because of some stomach problem and not agreeing with the music industry or paparazzi. These are really deeper issues. It's about following some family member into death. Let's also look briefly at Courtney Love, his wife. She had her own band and she had also a dramatic family background. Let's have a look.
Places. Courtney, your childhood reads like some kind of a novel that people wouldn't believe. What was your childhood like?
I don't know my biological father.
You don't know him personally, you mean?
Not really. I mean, I've had interactions with him.
It was an interesting slip of the tongue. I'm not sure what she wanted to say here. I'm not gonna speculate. But also here, she has a somewhat similar family background as Kurt. Let's follow.
More like altercations with him. He had custody taken away from him when I was 3.
Why? Why? Your father...
59 or 70.
Your father was not allowed to see you unsupervised until you were an adult, wasn't
He wasn't allowed to see me at all, ever.
And at 15, at least from what I read, you began to travel around and earn money as a stripper.
Mm-hmm.
So here a little comment on soulmates in love at first sight. So when people pick partners and they are not really aware of that, they normally pick partners with a very similar family background. And this obviously happens at a subconscious level. It's no coincidence that she also feels abandoned. She didn't really have a father. There are very similar family dynamics in her life. And due to these similarities in their family background, in their dynamics, they can feel very strongly about each other. They fit. If you have gaps in your own family history and you want to infer something about it, about family secrets, what really happened and so on, you can actually look at your partner and more often than not you will see these striking similarities, and you can infer about your own family history. It's like Jurassic Park. The gene gaps are filled by the genome of the frog or something like that. And similar here with the family history. So being soulmates is very telling.
As somebody who always wanted to be a poet, there's no money in it. I've always been looking for the quadruple entendre, the bard, what Shakespeare could do. And my mother said to me, "Now, Courtney, you just can't walk around with a hole in yourself because you had a bad childhood." And I remember.
So statements like that from a mother must be very hurting to a child or a teenager. These kind of heartless comments really lead to this feeling of abandonment. So we can see already, all this thing about depression and so on. They really come from the family background, in particular, with self-absorbed parents, showing no empathy. There's no love flowing from the parents to the child, and that leads to these destructive behaviors.
We're thinking, what a brilliant name,
Hole.
There are times on stage when you simulate your husband's death.
So here she feels exposed, the eyes are wide open and staring, so there's a little bit of fear. She's hiding behind her hand. So now she's trying to come up with some answer.
That's really terrible taste. Why do you do it?
What do? Do I ignore it? Do I acknowledge it? Is there a middle ground? What can I do?
So she's very teary, it's a little bit manic.
I sit here and, play Betty Crocker and pretend that I don't write music and die.
So this was your way?
Again, death is also on her mind.
What, paying tribute to him by doing that on stage?
It's more catharsis.
Do you blame yourself? I know that there are fans of his who blame you.
I do.
What could you have done different?
So now she's buying herself some time, having a sip of tea.
And what do you blame yourself for?
About 8,000 things.
8,000?
About 8,000 million things.
Not sure what 8,000 million things are.
Could you have stopped it?
Yes.
Could you have stopped it permanently?
No, but I could have been diligent.
Why do you think your husband killed himself?
He was ganged up upon.
Because?
Because I didn't need to call for an intervention. I shouldn't have called for an intervention. I just panicked.
Because you tried to get him off drugs, and because he was not able to get off drugs, even though you were trying to do the right thing, it's your fault.
He thought it was a waste of space. Yes, I told him he had dropped the baby, but he was in rehab.
And you think that's why he did it? Because you
I think
said
that's
to him,
a major reason.
Court.
I do. I think that's a major reason. All right. And also, he felt like a waste of space and a sellout, and he had made everything too huge, and it was his fault that everything was too huge.
So waste of space, sellout. This certainly speaks of a strong depression, of being not appreciated at all, being abandoned by his parents, and similar with her. And we see the close similarity between him and her. This is quite typical for soulmates. And somehow when I see the two, I think of soulmates. And that little inference trick can even be extended to other situations in life. So when you watch movies or read books, certain things resonate with you in your life, which make you feel at home, which make you feel comfortable. And these are things which very much align with your family history. So if you make a list of things you really like, books, TV shows, particular scenes in a movie, they will be all similar and they will all add to the puzzle which is yourself. Okay, I hope you found this useful and I talk to you next time. Bye.